Good afternoon, everyone, and happy July. Can you believe it's already July and Independence Day is on Thursday? I mean, it just seemed like yesterday we were talking about winter. And wow, summer has really arrived here in Southern California. It is going to be hot this week. It's around 90 today and headed upwards into the triple digits by midweek or week's end. So hopefully the weather's a little bit better where you are. But I know tons of you are in the heat. Cliff said he's still picking peas, crazy enough. So got a few more harvests, so it must be a little bit cooler there in northern Idaho. But we want to welcome you to July, welcome you to our live streams. And we've got a good one here today on some essential garden tasks to do for July. Cliff and Nishar here are moderators and camera guys here in the control room. Oh, nice.
Hey everyone, how are you? Beautiful hot day out here in California. I'll just put this over here. Great to have you all here bearing the heat. And for those of you who are with us for the first time, it's great to have you. We hope you enjoy your stay here and enjoy meeting other gardeners. Also want to say hi to Smart Pots being here, Monterey Lawn and Garden. You guys are fabulous. Have a great show. We'll see you at the end.
All right. Thanks, camera guy. Appreciate you handling things from the control room. All right, so I wanted to say hello to those of you that are here. A lot of you here for the first time today. Destiny, really glad they're here today. Hopefully you're enjoying the live stream so far. And if you are brand new, make sure you visit us every Monday, noon Pacific time. We're here, we're live streaming. We're providing you with garden support along with our expert team here of moderators, Smart Pots, and Monterey Lawn and Garden. So very glad that you're here. Yes, super hot Smart Pots. I know you've been through that already in Oklahoma City there, so maybe you can give us a little bit of advice. We're actually going to be filming a what to do in a heat wave video tomorrow. So make sure you stay tuned for that coming this week on our YouTube channel, as well as we also got a garden tour in the can, and that'll be coming to you soon as well. So always a fun time here. Patricia Rice just planted another wave of bush beans. Really glad to hear that, Patricia. We're actually going to be talking about that in the live stream as well, too. Stewie, hello from North Carolina. Great to have you here. Julie's got some things going on with her garden that she's going to ask Monterey Lawn and Garden some advice on. So if you do have pest and disease control issues, we've got the experts, Monterey Lawn and Garden and Clayton Smith, to answer those questions for you. Pop those in the chat and they'll help you out there. If you've got container questions, ask Smart Pots. They're always happy to answer your container garden questions. And let's jump right in. 808 Ladybugs from Hawaii. Always good to have you here. Brooklyn New, great. Thank you. Happy 4th of July to you as well. And hopefully you all are planning something to do fun on the 4th. We're actually going to be breaking out our wood fire oven pizza for the first time on 4th of July. For the summer anyway. I know it's kind of crazy. It's going to be 100 degrees and camera guy has got his heat-proof gloves on because that oven has to get up to 500 degrees. So call us crazy, but we're going to have a few friends over to enjoy our newly refurbished deck. So hopefully you all are having some fun plans too. Pop in the chat what you're going to be doing. Okay, we're going to jump into our July garden must-dos. Now these are essential tasks for July to get you rolling, get your garden rolling, and really to make the most of the work you've done so far, all the hard work, planting. Hopefully most of it, your summer planting, your initial summer planting is finished. And now's the time where we're kicking the garden into gear and doing what we need to do to support our plants so they can continue to produce good harvests for us for this month, August, and into the fall. Now, here in Southern California, things are really behind schedule. And I say schedule lightly because, you know, it's really not a race. I mean, a lot of us, when we see those pictures on social media, we're thinking, you know what? I don't have any fresh tomatoes yet. I don't have any beans yet. What's going on in my garden? But it's so dependent on the weather where you live. So just keep that in mind and realize it's all about the journey. It's not a race. It's all about moving at the pace that you enjoy and enjoying the food that you're growing in your own garden grocery store. So that being said, our harvests are about a month behind normal schedule this year, if there is anything normal anymore. We had tons of clouds in May. Almost every day was cloudy. About half of June was cloudy, and they're just kicking into gear here. So in fact, we just harvested our small little tomato last night, which we had on some grilled burgers. And let's see what else. We're ready to harvest some scallop squash, which we're going to do tonight for dinner, and then save some for our Garden Fresh pizza. So this is the time. The tip number one, what you need to do is enjoy your harvest. This is generally when they start rolling in. Now, I know you way south gardeners have been harvesting your tomatoes and other warm weather veggies for quite some time. And you gardeners that live in those southern, very hot climates might actually be coming to the end of some of your vegetables. Maybe you people down your gardeners down there in Florida and Texas and Arizona are just getting way too hot for summer gardening, or even using shade cloth to extend those warm weather harvests just a little bit longer. But us here in Southern California and you northern gardeners are just coming into the big harvest season. So get ready, get your harvest baskets ready. And I want to give you a couple little storage tips on harvesting, because sometimes, we're harvesting a whole bunch at once. And then what do we do with it all? I mean, number one, what I love to do is give it away to my neighbors. We've got neighbors that garden, some that aren't able to garden. So we're always bringing them zucchini and cucumbers, which we always seem to have a lot of. And if somebody stops by, we've got things that we can hand over to them as they're walking in and out the door. So it's always a good way to use your excess. And some people have never grown anything, so you never know. It might encourage them to get excited about growing some of their own food. Now, what I like to do too, for example, I'm picking some scallop squash this evening, but I want to save it until Thursday. We're going to have some tonight. So what I like to do to almost everything I harvest, aside from tomatoes, which I don't like to put in the fridge, is I wrap them in paper towels, or you can use a tea towel, something that will absorb the moisture. The key is don't wash it until you're ready to eat it. So wrap it in a paper towel, and a lot of times it will keep in your refrigerator for up to a week. Now, some things you do need to eat right away, like the berries. You want to eat those as soon as you possibly can. But harder vegetables like squash and eggplant, things like that, will keep in your refrigerator for a week or so. Even herbs. I usually stick them in water on my windowsill, not in the direct sun, or I wrap them in a paper towel and pop them in the refrigerator. And it really does extend the life of your herbs and of your vegetables. Now, tomatoes are a whole different animal. It does change the flavor when you put them in the fridge. So sometimes I pick them just when they start to blush, especially if we've got any squirrels or rat problems, and then ripen them on the kitchen counter, but out of direct sunlight, or you can put them in a paper bag to ripen. And that way you can get the most out of your tomatoes and really still have that homegrown flavor before the rats get it. So get ready to bring the harvest in and get creative about how you're using your vegetables. Typically, we make up a big pan of grilled vegetables at the beginning of the week. And then we eat those throughout the week. I try and think of different ways to eat them. Grill up a big pan and maybe add some tomatoes to it the next day for a little salad, or even put it on the side for an appetizer with some whipped feta cheese and crackers, something like that. So just get creative, and it's always fun to come up with new recipes, so you can share those back and forth on social media, and that way we can all get the most use out of our harvest as possible. Now, if you're into canning and preserving, I like to freeze my vegetables rather than can them. That's always a good way, of course, to preserve your harvest for later in the winter time. And I know Cliff here is the master at that. He and his wife almost can and preserve everything, and then they have food to eat all year long. During the winter time, they're constantly pulling out canned salsas, ketchups, all kinds of things. He's got tons of peas today that they're going to be freezing for use a year's worth of peas. He just told us in the pre-live stream chat. Rod, how are you? It's so good to see you. Oh my goodness, we haven't seen you in a while. So great to have you here. Rod's a longtime viewer from Baja, and we absolutely love it when Rod is able to be on. He's the pepper guy. He loves to eat those hot peppers. Rod, growing watermelon for the first time, and they love growing out here in Baja. I bet, if I'm not mistaken, it's probably the perfect climate for them there, out by the ocean, kind of temperate climate, and I'm sure they're doing absolutely beautiful. So Rod, great to have you here, and we always love hearing from you. Kim Weimer, Callie Kim, my tomatoes don't last that long. They're usually gone the same day I pick them. Yeah, I hear that. We picked one tiny one last night and had it on our hamburger, and it was gone in a minute. So I hear you on that one, Kim. There's so many fun ways that you can chop up and eat tomatoes, whether it's a fresh pico de gallo bio, put them on sandwiches. Garden fresh grilled cheese is always amazing. And I'm hoping we have a few more ripe ones by Thursday so we can use it for our garden fresh pizza. Leonard Green, Texas sun has scorched my tomato plants. That is brutal. The sun there has been absolutely brutal this year for many, many weeks. I hear you on that one. And one thing we're going to be talking about in our video this week, a little preview here, is different ways that you can use shade cloth. And that is a lifesaver. In fact, all of my shade cloth is going up tonight because with 100-degree temps, and all my tomatoes just coming on, I don't want to take any chances. So Leonard, you may want to bust some out if you don't have any. There's a Smart Pot right behind me. Which side of the camera is this on? That tan thing over there is actually a Smart Pot underneath. And it's got some fairly newly planted greens that aren't quite hardened off. Some heat-tolerant greens from my heat-tolerant green seed collection. So I've got a piece of shade cloth over it, and it blocks out a good portion of the sun's UV rays to protect it on this warm day. I think it's about probably over 90 in the sun and about 85 in the shade. So definitely goes a long way towards protecting your plants. So enjoy your harvest. And what I would love to have you do right now is pop in the chat what you're looking forward to harvesting this week, and what you're going to be making out of it. So I would love to hear some of your ideas, even if they're ideas for the 4th of July. That's always fun to get new ideas here. Ramona, great to have you on here. You're always doing fun stuff there with your grandkids. I harvested a lot of garlic for the first time. It's curing in the greenhouse. Just not sure how long I need to wait before I bring them in. Okay, Ramona, I usually like to, it really depends on how the temperature in your greenhouse, excuse me, but I like to wait until the necks are pretty hard and solid, and there's not a lot of green there in the neck. So it kind of depends if you're growing hard neck or soft neck, but just keep an eye on that. I actually do have a garlic harvesting and curing video. It's a couple years old, but you can pop that in to the search little magnifying glass on our YouTube channel and pull that up, and that'll give you some more info. Maria Garcia, hi Kim, so excited to be on a live video. Welcome, we're very glad that you're here. And if you have any questions, make sure that you ask them. We have a great supportive group of gardeners here, tons of Q's and A's flying around, and it's always fun. People are really getting to be good friends. I think we've been doing this for about 7 years. So there's people here in the chat that are coming back and saying, how are your tomatoes doing? How's your grandmother doing? She had surgery. All these things are flying, and there's a lot of good friendships being formed. So really appreciate you being here. Patrick Buckingham just hung shade cloth out this morning. Good idea, Patrick. In the North Carolina mountains. Got a late start this year. Last frost was around Mother's Day. Wow. So you really only have had your gardening season starting for about maybe a month and a half, 2 months now. I guess it's about a month and a half. So wow, it's really coming in strong here this summer. So good thing you got your shade cloth up, especially if your vegetables are still kind of on the small side. Do make sure you protect them. Peaceful Warrior, yes, the tomatoes are all flowering. I just don't want to see any more splitting. So definitely protect those tomato flowers in the heat. Now, the tomatoes themselves generally split because of excessive water, excessive heat that's actually boiling the tomatoes from the inside. So it's definitely helpful not only for the flowers, so the flowers don't dry up and drop off, but so the tomatoes literally don't boil from the inside and start to split. So even if you have a lot of tomatoes on your plant, it's a good idea to use that shade cloth to toss over your containers or your raised beds. And I'm going to be giving you some more info on that in our video that we'll post within a couple of days. Amber, how are you? Great to see you, Amber. How do you freeze your veggies? Do you blanch them or just throw them in the freezer bag right after harvest and washing them? You know what, Amber? I don't have tons of time to blanch and do all that. So I literally just throw them in the freezer bag. Generally do wash them first and maybe kind of pat them dry on a tea towel. And then even tomatoes, I freeze whole. Peppers, I freeze whole. Green beans, generally, I'll try and, snap them and cut the ends off. But they all get tossed in and the freezer, and I don't do a lot of extra. And when you pull them out of the freezer, they're not going to be firm, solid vegetables. The tomatoes are great that way for sauces and salsas and things like that, or something you might throw in the blender and then blend and make a little puree out of. The peppers are great the same way for sauces and soups and things like that. But it really is a good way to save your harvest. And then in those cold winter months, how much fun is it to pull those out and have that garden fresh flavor that you work so hard to grow in the summer. Okay, we're going to move on to July essential number 2. And we actually did a whole video on this last week on July's most important vegetables to plant, is kind of paraphrasing our video, but July's must plant vegetables. A lot of people get to July and they think, you know what? The season, it's well underway. It's too late to plant anything new. I'm just don't have enough time for brand new plants to get going, but you do. And I talked about in that video, the key is those quick growing vegetables that you can get a harvest from in about 4 to 6 weeks. And all the vegetables I planted are there in that video. Go back and watch it, because right now in the heat, it's crazy, and the vegetables that you have currently in the garden are getting stressed out. They may be getting attacked by pests, diseases. Maybe you didn't get your shade cloth up in time. We all lose plants in the heat. We all lose plants to pests and diseases. And how wonderful is it to have a whole fresh new crop of veggies growing? Sometimes it's way easier to start over with fresh new plants than to try and save a plant that's struggling. So do yourself a favor and plant a whole new wave of vegetables right now. Today I'm talking, right? I actually designed a whole seed collection just for that. It's called the Late Summer Garden Seed Collection. Quick growing, quick to mature. And I added a couple new ones to this, which are my favorites. You guys have heard me talk about Diva cucumber so many times. I just added the Diva cucumber to that one. You get tons of cucumbers from that. Doesn't need pollination, so you're guaranteed a bunch of cucumbers. And my favorite variety of basil called Prospera basil, which is resistant to lots of diseases as well as slow bolting. So that's all there for you. But get some of those veggies planted. Other ideas are beans, squash, cucumbers, basil, even zinnias and sunflowers you can keep on planting. And we are doing a sale, by the way. Thanks for popping that up on the screen there, Jerry. 50% off all of my seed collections from today through next week, which I think the ending date is July 9th. You can grab those over at CaliKimGardenandHome.com with the code JulyGarden. But grab them fast because they are going fast. But keep on planting. And I planted these new little 6-packs. You don't have to bust out your grow lights again. You can plant them right in your containers, right in your garden beds. But if you don't have room, I planted some here in these little 6-packs. And they're just growing in a spot in my garden where they get a couple hours of morning sun, because you don't want them getting overheated and drying out, and then some afternoon shade. And I've already got some teddy bear sunflowers popping up. And this is a Diva cucumber in the back. The green beans are ready to pop into the ground. I have some that are dying off, and these are ready to take their place. So definitely be succession planting. That's what that's called if you're brand new to gardening. And that way, the big advantage of that is too, you're not running out of harvests in August. So when you got plants dying, you got new ones to take its place. And guess what? You're going to be that much smarter for it, because you're going to get beans, squash, cucumbers, and even, how can I forget, my favorite tiny Tim tomato back here is going to be popping out with brand new tomatoes when some of your other ones might be taking a hit. Oh, Jerry, I forgot to ask you to pop that little picture of me holding that plant tray up. Those are some of the vegetables that I planted last week in my garden, even though I'm still waiting for some new harvest, but those went into in kind of empty spots and containers. So there'll be brand new fresh plants that we're just keeping on rolling on through the late summer and into the fall. So definitely don't stop planting. So let me hear in the chat what you're going to be planting this month, and I'm going to scroll back through and see what all you might be harvesting this week for your 4th of July celebration. Happy Canada Day, Diana. Great to have you here today. So yeah, you guys are celebrating Canada Day up there in the north. Happy Canada Day. Just took a break from the garden and saw the live chat. Wow, I'm so glad that you're here. I just harvested kohlrabi and going to fry them up tonight. Kohlrabi is delicious, and up there in the north you have cooler temperatures, so you can still get some of those cool weather vegetables planted in your garden. So always gauge what you're planting by the temperature. So way up north in Canada, you could still grow lettuce, you could still grow kohlrabi, maybe even possibly peas and radishes. The cooler temperatures that are, the cooler vegetables that like temperatures under 75. Down in the south, we're fiery hot. Get those warm weather veggies in the garden, and you're going to be that much happier in about a month because you took the time to do that now. Connie Riddle, how are you? Always good to see you here too. I'm growing Tiny Tims in grow bags since May 15th from seed. The plants look great, but no tomatoes either. Any ideas what might have happened? I use shade cloth when we have hot days. Okay, Connie, great question. Just be patient. That's only been about 6 weeks or so. So, it just really depends on the weather. They generally take about 60 days from seed to harvest when the temperatures are optimal, say between 70 and 90 degrees. So early in the spring, maybe you had cooler nights, which will definitely slow things down. If you have cloudy, rainy weather, it's definitely going to slow things down. My tomatoes are just now starting to get ripe, and a lot of them have been in the ground for a couple of months due to the cloudy weather we had in the early spring. So just hang in there. Good thing you're using shade cloth. Once you do see those flowers come on, that's a really important time to continue the shade cloth on the hot days and continue to keep them well watered and well fed. Hang in there. They're going to be coming along soon, I promise. I think this one has, I want to say 60 little tiny tomatoes on Tiny Tim. So it's definitely a great one to grow. And even though it's a determinate plant, it still produces, I want to say, over 6 weeks or so before the plant starts looking not so great and the production goes down. So it really is a powerhouse for a small little tomato. So highly recommend that. That's actually in my late summer garden seed collection as well, and in my container garden seed collection. So if you're interested in those, you can grab those collections too. Peaceful Warrior, how are you? I also have tons of varieties of peppers now fruiting. They're under a sheer cloth, which wouldn't let pollinators in. I forgot to uncover. The peppers have flowers. Will they fruit if I keep them covered? That is such a good question, Peaceful Warrior, and I'll tell you why. Because peppers are actually self-pollinating. Their flowers contain both male and female parts. I know, a little sex education here on our live streams. But all they need is pollinating is the wind, or for you to shake the plants. So you can go in there and kind of wiggle your plants a little bit, move the pollen around, and that will really go a long ways towards helping them produce more peppers. So if you're covering them to keep the bugs out, just keep doing that, and then wiggle your plants every couple of days, and you should be good to go. All right, let's jump back in. What was my next point here? Oh, yes. Here is a super important thing that you do this month for your plants to get the most harvest out of them. Support them however you can, all right? And with support, I'm not talking just about like tomato supports, pepper supports, or trellises for your vining plants. Of course, that's very, very important. But especially here in the dog days of summer, support them not only with trellises and clipping them up to the trellises whenever they're growing, but also supporting them with regular feeding and regular watering. Terry in the pre-live stream chat asked, is it okay to fertilize your plants when it's 90 degrees? And my response to her was, yes, it is, because they do need that support. It helps them make it through the stress of the heat stress. Now, that being said, I tend to like to use a more mild fertilizer in the heat. And my favorite of choice is Vermistera, either the Worm Tea or the Vitality, because it's very mild. It doesn't burn your plants, but it does provide a lot of really good bacteria and helps the plants be healthy and resist stress better. But I always like to apply it in the evening. And Vermistera never burns your plants, so I don't have to worry about that. But I just like, number one, it's cooler in the evening, but that way, you can actually water your leaves with it in the evening and water nice, deep watering with it, even during a heat wave, and it will help your plants reduce the stress. But the evening is a much nicer time to be out in the garden anyway, and it just gives your plants a nice little boost and a nice little pick-me-up, and it's perfectly okay to do even during a heat wave. So we got to water to support our plants. We got to fertilize to support our plants. The other thing I like to do is to make sure that you keep the bottom areas pruned and clear to support our plants, and that's just for airflow. I mean, when it's hot, you can get the disease come in. The pests really like to attack. Anytime a plant is stressed, they really like to do that. So all of my squash, I'm growing vertically, even my zucchini. So last night, actually, I went around and pruned a whole bunch of things, the cucumbers and zucchini, just to get that airflow going and really help reduce the disease risk. So go back a few weeks ago, we posted a video on how to help your garden, a 2-step plan to help your garden resist disease. And pruning is definitely one of them. So go back and watch that video in case you missed it, and it'll give you lots of good tips and information on how to help your garden bypass bypass the whole disease cycle, or at least control it. So I want to know how you are supporting your plants, what your favorite way is, whether it's through shade cloth like we talked about, whether it's through pruning, whether you're fertilizing now during your heat wave, and what you're doing to support your plants to keep them healthy, because healthy plants are going to be happy plants and they're going to be productive plants. So super important that you keep that going here, definitely through July when the harvests are rolling in. Okay, PJ, how you doing here? Great to have you here today. We'll be planting more tomatoes, okra, cucumbers, basil, and eggplant. All great vegetables and herbs to plant during the heat. I forgot to mention okra. That is a trooper in the heat. You know, I grew okra a couple years ago. It's not my favorite vegetable to eat, but it's a beautiful plant. And that does not need covered in the heat wave unless you're getting up in the 110s or 120s. Those of you in Arizona, Florida, and Texas can let me know how it does in those kind of temps. But I didn't need to cover it here, and it still just kept on going. In fact, it probably grew even faster in the heat. So it's one of the most heat tolerant vegetables you could possibly grow. Along with those heat tolerant greens, make sure you're getting those planted as well. The kale, the chard, what else did I have there in my new collection? I know the purslane is a great heat tolerant, like edible weed actually. Amaranth is a great heat tolerant green. There's lots of them there in my heat tolerant green seed collection too. But that way you can still have your summer salads. Esther's daughter, always good to have you here and to see you making comments, is planting beans. So definitely one that you don't want to stop, because there's so many different varieties, so many different colors, and you can just pop them in your empty spaces as you pull beans out, or get them started like I did here in the cow pots of the 6-packs, and they're ready to go as soon as your other ones are kind of starting to reach the end of their life there. Okay, let's pop back in the chat here, see what questions we have, and we'll move on to our next tip in just a moment. Jackie, I separated my 3-stem tomatoes and they are thriving. Yahoo! I'm so excited. Way to go there, Jackie. And I'm so glad that you're enjoying them. And 3 stems, you're going to have a ton of tomatoes. Lots to can, lots to preserve, and hopefully some to have on 4th of July. So there'll be a little tip on my tomatoes, a little update on my string tomato trellis on our garden tour. So definitely stay tuned for that, and a little tip on how to deal with if they branch off into 2 stems like some of mine have done. A little tip from a viewer that we've now implemented in our trellis as well. Peaceful Warrior, can I also use the sheer cloth over my strawberries? Do they self-pollinate like the peppers? Well, boy, do strawberries self-pollinate? I think they do, but if someone can pop that in the chat, one of you garden experts out there, I'm pretty sure they do. You can definitely do that. What you may want to do too is, well, no, you want to keep the bugs out. So yeah, someone just answer in the chat here. I can't remember if strawberries are self-pollinating or not. That would be super helpful. Okay, Alex, which way do I plant my rows of cucumbers on trellises? Okay, what you want to do, Alex, is make sure that you're planting your trellises in the back of your garden beds. We did a raised bed video, I want to say sometime in the spring, where we talked about how to arrange the plants in your bed. And it's also in my book on raised bed gardening. But always plant your trellises in the back, and you want to plant them facing the sun. Sometimes if you plant them with the skinny part facing the sun, the cucumbers on the side aren't going to get the full impact of the sun. So if you have the right orientation in your garden, and you can plant your trellis like this in your garden bed with your cucumbers growing up this way, that's the optimal way. Now, that being said, here in our garden, of course, nothing is optimal in every garden. So we do have a lot of trellises facing this way. There definitely are still producing. So, you know, just do the best you can with the space that you have. But the most important thing is that they're in the back of your garden bed, so they're not shading out the smaller plants in the front. Maybe you've got some spillers or some fillers in the middle of your garden bed. You definitely don't want those shaded out unless they're plants that will benefit from a little bit of shade. So do go back and watch our raised bed videos, because actually under one of my A-frame trellises, I've got some arugula planted under there, and it really is benefiting from the shade that the watermelon is giving it. And in fact, I still have lettuce going in spite of our temperatures, because it's getting partially shaded underneath the watermelon trellis. Thank you so much, Clayton. The strawberries are self-pollinating. I was thinking they were, but it just escaped me at the moment. So yes, it would be perfectly okay to put that sheer cloth over your strawberries to keep the cabbage loopers down, the little moth butterflies that fly around and lay eggs on your plants. And that will really help cut down on those bugs that you might have crawling around. Okay, let's head back and talk about our tip number 4. We kind of covered feeding and watering already, but I do also want to say too, is during this month, not only can you give your plants that water soluble boost every couple of weeks, but you can do what I like to call a mid-season boost. And all this is detailed in my book on raised bed gardening. But that would be some of the slower release fertilizers to kind of help them through the next month. So usually about now, I'll go around every couple of like once a week or so, I'll take a couple of the garden beds and I'll put a handful of compost and a handful of worm castings at the base of my plants, and then I'll water it in so it soaks down into the roots. It's really important that you water that in because then it's activated by the water, or you can even water in with worm tea. But what that does is it'll soak down into the roots, really help support your plants throughout the end of the summer, and just give them that extra boost of food that they need to keep producing. Because a lot of our veggies, like our tomatoes, our squash, our cucumbers, are what's called heavy feeders. Our watermelon, it takes a lot to produce those vegetables, and they need some food to just keep them going, kind of like we do. You know, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you might need a little snack to keep you going through the end of the day. So they're like that too. So you definitely want to support them. And you're going to see, if you're consistent with this feeding and watering, you're going to see a big difference in how much you're harvesting. Okay, Patricia Rice, thank you so much. That's what I love about this community. We're all in here, working in here together. They are self-pollinating, talking about strawberries. However, the pollinators can help to fertilize. So Patricia, thank you so much for that. So just a little something to keep in mind there if you're going to be covering your strawberries with that bug netting type of situation. Okay. Let me see how much time we have left. Okay, we actually have time for one more tip. I wasn't sure if we'd have time for this or not. And then we'll head back in the chat and take some more questions here at the end. Here in July, especially when the heat's coming in, your plants may be stressed and you may have a lot of pest attacks. So really keep an eye out for that. I mean, really the best thing you can do is just make sure that you're checking on your garden daily and really keeping an eye out for that. What I tend to do about once or twice a week, usually in the evenings, because it's so pleasant in the evenings and so much cooler, as I walk around the garden and kind of spray my plants down. So pests and diseases, especially pests, are super important to watch out for. So we have tons of spider webs like every single night going on and bringing in a lot of bugs. So you really have to keep an eye on it. So I like to just kind of go around, look at my plants, spray them down if I see little aphids or little, bugs on the leaves, and just kind of give everything kind of a good wash down just to get everything off. So that's one thing I like to do about once or twice a week. But when you see those ugly bugs, for example, the hornworms, not even a bug, this terrible looking worm. And Jerry, if you want to pop that picture up there, this is one that was on my tomatoes last summer. Thankfully, haven't had any yet this summer. They are nasty. So they're laid big, huge green worms. Many of you are familiar with them. They are laid by the Sphinx moth, and they hatch into this. Actually, it's quite beautiful. If you have that picture there, Jerry, it's a quite beautiful worm, but it is large and it can be super disconcerting if you see that on your plants. But the best way really to take care of it is just to be aware, look out for it. It does tend to blend into the foliage, and then just hand pick it off. In fact, one of our viewers, she's on here today, Jan, 808 Ladybugs, actually sent me a pair of tongs last summer. There it is right there. Thanks, Jerry. Which I would then use to pick those babies off my plants because they like to cling onto the plant, and the tongs work perfect for that. So thanks to Jan, she had the foresight to actually mark the tongs with red tape. So I know not to use them for my salads. Actually, I don't even take them inside. I just leave them out in the garden. But it's a great way to pick those worms off and get rid of them. However, we do have Monterey here, one of our brand partners, and they've got a great product that works beautifully for hornworms, and it kills on contact, and it's a takedown. So I always recommend having a couple things in your garden arsenal, like takedown, garden insect spray, and complete disease control to handle the insects when they do happen, because this one is something you don't want to have. They will literally destroy your tomato plants overnight. And I know Jeff Smart Pots, I'm not sure if he's on here today, but he had a squash bug infestation that literally took hold. He texted me and says, Kim, what are these? What do I need to do? I said, run out, get yourself some takedown, get yourself some garden insect spray. By the time he got back, it was maybe about 12 hours from when it started. The squash bugs had destroyed a couple of his cucumber plants. So always good to have something on hand for when the pests do show up. Typically they show up about this time of year. Okay, Amber, yes, I am right there with you. Can't stand that hornworm or the moth. Thankfully haven't seen them yet. The flea beetles are the biggest issue for me right now. Yeah, Amber, I hear you on that one. We've had a couple of those flea beetle issues too. And I did go ahead and spray it down first with water, but they did come back, and then I sprayed it down with the takedown. Always, always, always spray your plants in the evening. When pollinator activity is not as active, when they're not as active, and so that you don't have UV damage to your leaves. But the takedown did take care of it. B. Lewis, oh my goodness, I can't pick the hornworms. I have to cut the branch off that they're on or use takedown. Yeah, absolutely. That's one way to take care of it too, is just to cut that entire branch off, or just to spray them, and then that'll take care of it too with the takedown. Okay, Clayton, thank you so much for that. Clayton is our Monterey horticulturist. BT or spinosad Monterey Garden Insect Spray will work well for hornworms. Okay, thank you so much. So either one of those two sprays, you can grab those over at Monterey Lawn and Garden's website, montereylawngarden.com, and you can use the code CaliKim10. You get a 10% discount over there. So it works really well. And I would suggest having some on hand, because the worst thing is, like what happened to Jeff, is you have those infestations and then you don't have anything to take care of it. So a lot of our viewers here on the live streams are being proactive, which I always suggest, and it just helps minimize the disappointment, and then you get more to harvest because of it. So always a good thing there. Okay, let's see here. Let me see what other questions we have. How do you get sweeter strawberries? From Michelle Jelks. Okay, Michelle, sometimes the strawberries, that's usually a response to stress, either too hot, too cold, or maybe if they're slightly misshapen, they didn't get adequately pollinated, or it could be that you need to just give them a good dose of fertilizer. So if the temperatures have been fluctuating a lot of times that's why your strawberries are kind of tasteless. But I always suggest giving them a good dose of the Vermistera worm tea, and that really does help feed your plants and keep them healthy, and be consistent with strawberries for sure. Your containers, or if you have them in the crate towers with the Smart Pots crate liners like I do, about every 2 weeks is good for your containers, and hopefully that'll help. Margaret, how are you, Margaret? Great to see you here today. My squash and zucchini only have male flowers. When do the females show up? Okay, that's a really good question. You want to go back and watch our hand pollinating video we posted a few weeks ago. Typically, the males show up first, and then about 2 to 3 weeks later, the females show up. So your goal is to get them both there at the same time. However, that being said, when it's really hot, a lot of times your plant will produce only male flowers for a time being. So hang in there. Hopefully, maybe you can cover with some shade cloth, might help bring the temperature down. Hopefully the females will show up. And then if you're having trouble getting squash, you definitely do want to hand pollinate. And by the way, the one that we're picking tonight was the one that I hand pollinated on the video a few weeks ago. And here it is. It got pollinated and it's growing, and now we're going to have it for dinner. So it's a great way to get more out of your squash, your cucumbers, or your melons, is to hand pollinate. Okay, Patricia, a question for you northerners. Do you start your brassicas from seed in mid-July to transplant out for the fall? Okay, great question here, Patricia. And I've actually already started some of my fall garden seeds, mainly to show you guys how to grow them, because it's going to be pretty hot here until November. But yes, you northern gardeners, and some of you northern gardeners that like Cliff and other gardeners that are experts on this, you can chime in here. But typically you want to start your seeds about 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes even in the fall, 10 weeks before your last frost date. So if you start mid-July, they'll be ready to go outside in August, early September. then they can get established before you get frost. And many times when the roots are established, they're going to survive the first few frosts of the winter time. So yes, northern gardeners, about mid-July is a good time to do that. And we'll be bringing you some more videos probably in a few weeks. And by the way, I have a couple things I want to tell you guys about. We are making a trip out to see Gary this year from the Rustic Garden in August. So we're going to be doing some videos and live streams together. So get ready for that. That's going to be about mid-August. But coming up in 2 weeks, we have a very special live stream that we're going to be doing with Smart Pots from an amazing garden show called Cultivate. And we'll have more information on that for you next week. But you do not want to miss a live stream on July. Let me double check the date. July the 17th, which is in 2 weeks from today. Very special live stream from a garden show that will give you a preview of everything that's coming out next year. So it's an industry garden show, and we're going to get a behind the scenes sneak peek with Smart Pots. So stay tuned next week for more info on that. Okay, let's see here. Other questions in the chat for me before we close out here. Got about 5 minutes left that we can take more of your garden questions, which we love to answer here on our stream. Okay, Jennifer, thanks for your question. I have one sugar pie pumpkin on my vine, but the vine is looking yellow and it's not producing any more flowers or leaves. Does that mean it's done? I planted another seed to try and get another vine. This would be a great question for Cliff, our moderator, to answer. He's a giant pumpkin grower and pretty much an expert at growing pumpkins. So Cliff, if you want to pop an answer to that in the chat, that would be great. Of course, I always suggest planting a couple different seeds so that you've got backup plants. And I'll tell you more about that in our garden tour video. I'll show you my backup plant area so you can see how I like to do backup tomatoes. Peaceful Warrior, I'm vermicomposting now and getting some tea. Is it safe enough pH to use on fruit, veggies, and blueberries? Absolutely. And vermicomposting, for those of you that are new gardeners, is worm composting. So it's when you have a worm bin or a worm farm of some kind. The worms poop, they produce what's called castings, and then some of that drains out of the worm farm and makes a worm casting tea. So it's a very, very mild fertilizer, but very effective and one of the most natural fertilizers that you can use on your plants. So yes, it's very mild. It's not going to burn your plants. Absolutely perfectly safe to use on anything in your garden. So highly recommend that. If you don't have your own worm farm, you can grab the Vermistera worm tea over at vermistera.com. And they've got all kinds of great worm casting products for you to use, which I've used for many years, and they work absolutely wonderfully. Okay, Jennifer, Cliff put the question up there, or the answer up there, and it's telling Jennifer it doesn't sound good for the pumpkin, but hard to tell without a photo, but the plant should not just die without frost taking it out. Okay, so maybe it has some other type of an issue, a disease issue of some kind. So it probably will definitely be a good idea to get a couple new seeds planted. Maybe plant yourself a new little 6-pack so you have several plants just in case, but cross your fingers on that one. Okay. All right, Jill, too hot to go outside in the garden if things aren't getting planted. My son Keone has been watering for me, getting old. So it's always nice to enlist the help of your family members. And the kids getting out there in the garden, if you have kids, get them out in the early mornings or in the evenings. It's summertime now. A lot of them are off school. You can even give them, which I've heard of a lot of parents doing, their own little smart pots to grow a garden in. The 5 gallons work great for that. Even a 10-gallon, or they have like a 100-gallon that I've grown a full-on garden before. So if it's a project you want to do with your kids, head over to smartpots.com. You can find all kinds of containers, colors, shapes, and sizes for you to grow with your family. But always great to enlist the help of your kids and get them excited about growing their own food and harvesting their own vegetables. Julie, yesterday I sifted the contents of my 100-gallon Smart Pot compost sack and got, let's see, that comment left me right now. Thanks, Jerry. And got a wheelbarrow full of black gold. How should I store this? Okay, that is a lot of compost, Julie. Thank God for that compost sack, because you can keep it covered. It breaks down quickly. It makes your compost like a charm and is just a great way to go for keeping it all contained. What I do with my finished compost is, number one, I have a couple of compost sacks. So I like to store my finished compost in one of them. Or you can store it. I'll also used to store it in, I have a kind of a round kind of metal, I guess it's a piece of a metal galvanized pipe that's kind of stuck over on our side yard. I would pour my finished compost in there and keep it in there. You can keep it in a 10-gallon Smart Pot. It doesn't matter if it dries out, it's perfectly okay. You can keep it in a trash can. I would give it some aeration, maybe, you know, drill some holes in the lid, and just let it sit in there until you're ready to use it. So typically what I'll do is I keep a 5-gallon Smart Pot of compost right down here in my garden, so I can grab it real quick and throw it on my plants. And then I keep my finished in my 50-gallon compost sack over here on the side of the house, and then I'll just kind of refill it as needed. But then I have another 50-gallon that's in process of composting that I'm adding my scraps to it. So I usually have 3 or 4 different compost piles going at once. A couple finished ones and then a couple in process. So I might have to go back and do another video on that just to show you guys a visual of how that all works best for me. Okay, guys, it's getting hot out here, and we're going to go ahead and close out for today. I do see Sandra's comment, though. It's been a few years since you've traveled to Gary's Garden. Yes, it definitely has, and we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a beautiful time of the year, although probably a hot time of year. It's going to be in August, but we're definitely planning on some fun live streams and great videos there at his garden. It's a gorgeous time of year there, and it's always a fun time harvesting and checking things out and hanging out with Gary and Angela. So, you guys, I hope everyone has a really happy 4th of July. Stay cool, keep your gardens cool, keep yourself hydrated, and stay safe on 4th of July. And hopefully you get to harvest something from your garden to share with your family and friends. We'll be back here next Monday at noon Pacific time. Make sure you tune in, and we'll have a couple of YouTube videos in between that are going to be packed full of great information to help you grow your own veggies. Camera Guy signing off for today. Thanks, Camera Guy, for being in the control room. For Cliff and Nisha, our moderators, and Monterey and Smart Pots for helping us out in the chat too. Have a happy and safe 4th, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.